And for the first time in 2022, it's the Coach Brent Thompson Show here on the Citadel Radio Network, coming to you this year from the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. The Coaches Show presented by Cutwater. We're joined by the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson. We'll talk Citadel football over the next hour. Going to do it a little differently this year. Going to be more interactive. Come out and join us this season because we'll have some film breakdowns, which we'll get to later on this hour. You'll have a chance to submit your questions, which we'll put Coach on the hot seat for later on this hour as well. So if you're in attendance this evening here at the Sportsbook of Charleston, submit your questions up front, and we'll get to those later on this hour. You'll have a chance to win some tickets to the home opener Saturday. And, of course, we'll talk about the game this past week, get ready for the game this upcoming week, and a whole lot more. We'll jam it all into the next hour. Coach, good evening. How are you?
Good to be here. Had a good couple of days of practice here. We were up and down a little bit, but for the most part, I thought we've had a good, solid preparation for ETSU this weekend.
We'll talk about that game coming up in a little bit. New location here at the Sportsbook of Charleston. We got a wall of 8 TVs here to our right. We got the big screen projector to our left, which we'll use for the film breakdown later on, so very cool. And make sure you come out and see us each and every week. By the way, just as a quick little side note, if you're wondering where we are, it's right next to Ashley Furniture here in North Charleston, owned by Citadel grad Burke Parrott, and a big sponsor of ours as well on the radio network. So perfect. You go get yourself a lavender, and then you come in, Davenport, I should say, lavender Davenport, and then you come in here and talk some Citadel football with Coach and myself and everybody else. Coach, let's dive in. First Coach's Show of the year. Let's talk just a few moments here on the first game of the season this past week against Campbell. You know, in the pregame show, I always ask you, when you have that first game of the year, do you really know what to anticipate with no preseason games in college football? So now that we have that first game behind us, just what were your impressions of your first look at your squad here in 2022?
Well, you know, I thought in the first half that we did some things offensively. We moved the football. We had 2 really long drives. Unfortunately, we had a couple of setbacks throughout those drives, and that's where you don't know. That's where you don't know. You know, you can practice it, you can take care of it on the practice field, but when you get into game live situations and you're going 15, 16 reps, that's a long drive, and especially to not put any points on the board or to get 3 points out of it like we did. I thought that was good and bad. You know, it was good that we had those drives, but it was unfortunate that we only were able to come away with 3 points. But we did exactly what I thought we had to do with those 2 drives. Unfortunately, we didn't finish those 2 drives. They're an explosive team. They're going to throw the long ball. They came at us right away, and we were probably a few feet away from a sack on their first possession. And scramble, we didn't pace to our guy like we're supposed to. We didn't pace to him, and throws one up into the end zone and makes a pretty easy catch for a touchdown in there. We answer it with a pretty good drive, and unfortunately, we got off track in that drive, late in the drive, around 14, 15, right into that area, and couldn't recover on that drive. So the first half went about the way that we were still pretty good. You know, I went into the halftime and I said to the guys, I said, hey, look, just settle down. We come out, we get 1 score here, we'll make it a 1-score game, and we're right back in this. We got plenty of football left in us. And then, unfortunately, we turned it over right there on that drive and then things just kind of rattled from there.
You know, you talked about the offense. We were talking about up in the booth on Thursday night, and Lee Glaze, my broadcast partner, of course, knows the offense better than even I do. We both thought that your new quarterback, you know, looked comfortable running the offense for the first time. With a new team, new system, he did have a couple of interceptions, but the touchdown pass, and just simply in terms of having command of that offense in his first game, looked pretty good. What did you think of Peyton under center?
No, I thought Peyton did a pretty good job. We've got to speed up a little bit. He's got to get comfortable reading signals, getting the signs in. But I did think that he did all the shifts and motions, which is a little bit new for us. We've had a lot of new formations in. The new blocking rules, the new blocking below the waist rule, or the lack of cut blocking rules, has forced us to change our offense just a little bit. It's forced us to do some things a little bit differently, and it's going to create a little bit more motions and shifts, and probably a little bit more misdirection in the offense than have been there before. And he's got to get out of the huddle quicker. We've got to get to the line of scrimmage so that way we can make all of our motions adjustments as well as our checks. But he did a really good job of making some checks in there. Didn't feel comfortable a certain place, checked it into a play that he felt comfortable with. And from that part, I thought, he did a good job. Unfortunately, the 2 turnovers, those are the ones that really kill us, the 2 interceptions.
On the other side of the football, defensively, they allowed the 2 touchdowns early, but then the rest of the game, I thought the defense, it may be overlooked when you look at the final score or the way the game played, but I thought the defense actually played pretty well Thursday.
Yeah, I thought they had 1 bad drive. The defense really, the second drive where they went down, they went up by 14 right there. They had their way with us. They mauled us down the field a little bit. They were big. The running back was big. The offensive line was big. That was the only time all night where I felt, man, they really kind of showed their power against us. But the first drive, like I said, a little bit of a fluke. We had them pinned. We should have had an opportunity to get them on the ground 2, maybe 3 times. Little Keystone copped it out there, and next thing you know, we're all on the ground, and he's throwing a touchdown in there. But other than that, we gave up 6 more points all day with 2 turnovers in the positive side of the 50 for them. Not a bad day defensively if you look at it that way.
Now, unfortunately, part of that performance included the injury to Wilson Hendricks. How's he doing?
Wilson's doing well. He's, we still got a long way to go with him to figure out exactly what the next step needs to be. But as far as him dealing with a pretty good injury, he's doing really well with it.
And it's such a shame anytime you see any sort of injury, especially one that serious where you have to bring the stretcher up. But, I mean, he's played so well for you in his early time here at the Citadel so far in his career.
Yeah, last year he was our leading tackler. We had 7 tackles going in to the fourth quarter right when he got injured there. So he was having a good night. I thought when I went back and watched him on film, he really had a good night. And we're certainly going to miss him.
Yeah, never a good time to lose any sort of player, but when it happens first game and now you have to address that the rest of the year, how do you feel about the secondary here filling that void moving forward?
Well, the good thing is we have some older guys there. Right now, Caleb DeVoe is kind of filling into that spot. Trayvon Wallace is going to fill into that spot a little bit. Carson Walter will fill into that spot a little bit. Beverly can move over and fill that spot a little bit. It leaves you thin in some certain other areas, but just the experience because Wilson has played so many reps in there going all the way back to the 2020 fall season where he really started taking a lot of those reps. So it's going to hurt you a little bit, but we do have some older, more experienced guys in there that we can fill it with.
While we're on the subject of health and some moving around, the offensive line, do you imagine after Thursday, I know the second half brought some changes, do you think we'll be back to that same starting 5 this week?
We're trending that way. We're still got a couple of days to go here. We don't know for sure if Mike's going to be back yet, but Mike is taking some snaps. He's taking some live reps with us. He's moving around. He's moving around better. It's just a matter of whether we can get him to push off on it or not. But, yeah, unfortunately, when Mike went out, we had to move Zach Blanchard to right guard, and then we moved Bryson Jones from the right guard. We had to move Bryson Jones to the right guard, and then we put Sawyer Whitman in our left guard, which is a true freshman starting in there. And he did a fairly good job for a true freshman.
Yeah, so new quarterback, new center, some new pieces on that offensive line. Just the first game, but overall, what were your impressions of the offensive line's performance Thursday?
Once again, I thought we did really well in the first half when we were clicking. Second half, we had to press a little bit more. We had to try to get the ball to the perimeter a little bit more. I don't know that we could have ran it inside any more effectively than we did in the first half and the second half, but I would like to have seen it a little bit more.
Last thing I'll ask you about from Thursday now moving forward was in the special teams department. Looked like we saw both punters out there. Do you have some sort of clarity now at that position moving forward?
Yeah, there's a couple things there. Stur was our fifth-year guy, the guy that we brought in to give us a little bit of a help, give us a little bit of the depth with Ben Steele being out. We thought it would be best to punt him earlier, punt him with the first punt, just to relieve some of the pressure of James Platt. Platt's been doing a really good job at punting, but we wanted to, give a guy with a little bit of experience in that situation to punt first, and then, James can come in and punt. So, all in all, I think together those guys will get better. They'll get a little bit more comfortable. It's a little bit new punt scheme that those guys are working, but all in all, I think they did okay.
Bulldogs lost the opener to a really good Campbell team on the road on Thursday. Now return home, and we'll welcome in ETSU in the conference opener and home opener this week. And when we come back here on the Coaches Show, we'll talk about that game, talk about this week's opponent, look ahead to kickoff on Saturday, and we'll also work our way towards a video breakdown as well with Coach as we look back at last year's game with ETSU. So plenty more to do here on the Coaches Show, presented by Cutwater as we get ready for the Citadel and ETSU coming up this Saturday. We're out at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. Join us every Wednesday night here throughout the football season as we talk Citadel football, and you have a chance to submit a question and be here in person to watch the video breakdown. Of course, you could also always watch it on YouTube as well, listen on radio, join us in person. Plenty of ways to take in the Coaches Show and plenty more to do tonight. We'll come back, get ready for that game Saturday with ETSU. It's Brent Thompson Coaches Show presented by Cutwater here at the Sportsbook of Charleston. More next after this on the Citadel Sports Network. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Thank you. This one's just, yep, okay, that one's me. Back on the Coaches Show, the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, here at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. The Coaches Show is presented by Cutwater. We'll be out here each and every Wednesday throughout the football season talking Citadel football, new location, and a few new parts to the Coaches Show this year as well. You'll be able to continue to have your questions answered if you come in person and submit your questions. And new this year, we'll also be doing a film breakdown. So head on over to your computer, get over to YouTube, and find it at the Citadel Sports YouTube page. Or just better off joining us in person here at the Sportsbook of Charleston and seeing it in person. We'll break down this Saturday's game with ETSU coming up, but as part of that, Coach is going to break down some film for us as well. Coach, before we get to these plays, these are from last year's game with ETSU. And if we think back to last year's game, that's another one where the final score may not indicate exactly how that game went. It was a 6-point game late in the third quarter before they finished with a few unanswered scores. So before we get to the actual film, just thinking back to last year's game, your thoughts on matching up with that ETSU team that we're going to see here on Saturday?
Well, once again, I thought we played really well in the first half. We had an opportunity to be able to get it to about a one-score game, like you said, like we were talking about. And unfortunately, what happened was they ended up just leaning on us a little bit too. We couldn't go score for score with them. We did have some big plays, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those big plays here. We had some really good things go on in the first half, and then as the game went on, as soon as they got that stop, and then they went up by 2 scores, and then by 3 scores, and that's where it becomes very challenging with very limited time left. But they had 2 really good backs. They had I believe their left tackle is playing for LSU right now, so they've got. They had some really good players on that team. Now, they still got a lot of those guys still left. It's a new coaching staff here. So a little bit of the film that I'm going to show you, the defensive coordinator is still there, so we still can talk a little bit about the structure of their defense. And then the offensive coordinator is new. He came from Slippery Rock. And then, of course, Coach Quarles is an offensive guy, came from Furman. So you'll see a little bit of mix and match in their offense between Furman and Slippery Rock. I'll show you a little bit of that going back to last week's game against Mars Hill, being that it is a new offense. Coach Sanders ran the offense on the old staff and was really a heavily run-oriented team. Those guys were very similar to us as far as they wanted to be able to control the clock. They were going to huddle. They weren't going to go up-tempo too much on you. They were more two-tights. They were going to play with H-backs, and they have 2 really good running backs. One of them is back this year. And then they take their shots in the play action when you start to sneak your safeties down in there. So I'll talk a little bit about what their new offense looks like and a couple of things that's kind of trending right now on the offensive side for what they're doing. Right now is we'll start off here with their base structure. So they're a 3-4 front. Coach Taylor's been doing it for a long time. Coach Taylor's been all around the Southern Conference. He's been Tennessee Tech. He's been at Wofford. He's been at ETSU. He's very, very familiar. He's an older guy, so he's got a pretty good idea about the option, about how it functions. So he plays this structure right here, and he plays it really, really well. They got 3 down linemen right here. They got 2 20 linebackers, we call them. All right, those guys are going to be head up our guards. These guys right here, their number one blitz that they like to pressure us with, and they'll bring it again this year. They bring it about every single year. All right, they take this guy right here. It's usually the field guy, but sometimes the boundary guy. And they'll take this guy and they'll pop him right into our A gap, okay, which makes it a little bit difficult. We got to make sure that all of our gaps are secured against them. They'll take the nose guard, who's playing really what we call a zero nose, which is head up our center, and they're going to move him to the right to allow this guy. So the nose guard will take this A gap. The linebacker will take this A gap. And then this guy right here, he's got to come over the top, and he's got to fill that spot. He's got to fill that void. All right. We're in a traditional spread. This is kind of our base alignment right here. This is almost where we base all of our start of all of our run game right here, especially. We're in a flex position with our wide receivers. The flex position really draws these corners, what we call these corners right here, are into a run support role. So we take anything that's about 5-6 yards from the football. Those guys are run support. They're almost as deep as those linebackers or shallow as those linebackers right there. All right. What they will typically do is anytime that we motion one way or the other, that particular corner to the opposite side of that, he'll now become a run support defender. So this guy moves, this guy comes. All right. This guy moves, this guy comes. So, and vice versa, everything goes with it. So all the secondary movement with it. So you just take a look, all right? So there's that pop blitz that I was talking about. So this right here is one of our counter. This was a good play for us last year. I believe we probably had over 100 yards just on this play right here. This is a quarterback counter play. All right, we're giving everything a toss look, all right, one of our base plays. We're giving fake and toss, sell and toss this way, all right. And this play goes all the way back to the Washington Redskins. All right, it's a counter tray play where we pull GT right here. We pull the guard, we pull the tackle. Everybody runs a version of this play. This is our version of this play. A shotgun team will run a version of this play. I-back teams run versions of this play. All right, so this is kind of our version of this play. Now, what we're trying to do with this is get our quarterback all the way to the perimeter. So we're gaining blockers to this side of the field. Now, when we catch him in this pop right here, this Mike pop, we're in pretty good shape. All right, we've got the rotation of the secondary going against the play. We've got the Mike pop all covered up right here. And now we're going to gain all of these bodies. All right, we're gaining. So if we go 3 for 3 on the perimeter right here, 1 there, 2 there, 3 there, we're going to be in pretty good shape. And that's how we end up with a pretty big play. This was, like I said early on, we hit this 3 or 4 times just to get us moving, you know. The one thing that you got to do, and I'm going to talk about a couple of our other counters that we have. The one thing that you got to do against these guys is you got to counter them. They run really, really fast. They're very keyed in. You got to play their responsibilities against them. You know, you got to play the corner support against them. So here's the tight coverage to it. That guy's popping the gap. You can see the nose moves. Nose moves with our center. We've got to make sure. So you got to drill this all week in practice. You got to drill this Mike popping this gap right here. You got to make sure that everything's covered up pretty good. Like our tackle to kind of keep our feet so we can catch anybody coming back around. And then Jalen does a good job of just being patient and watching the split take place. All right, going on to the next play right here. So this is it's a counter-looking play, and the reason why you like these kind of plays is watch the linebackers. The linebackers are very keyed into the fullback, all right? So whichever way the fullback steps, these guys are going to start to get their motions there. So once again, we're in a little bit of it's a spread backfield alignment with nasty wide receivers, all right? The nasty wide receivers right here, it still is going to create this cover two with these two corners, all right? No matter what direction we run, all right, those two corners are going to try to support. So what we did here is we did no motion with it to try to keep the corners out of the play. All right, we want to put it just all on the safeties at this point. All right, this is just a regular old inside trap play for us. Now, we've got a play off of this, which I believe is the next clip on here that I'll show you. So we've got a counter, and then we've also got a counter trap option off of it. So here's our trap. All right, this is kind of the counter version of the play. You can see we've got a pretty good play going here. All right, we lose it a little bit at the nose guard position, but you can see this linebacker right here gives us just enough room to this backside A gap to where this ball is going to go. All right, that right there. So we're going to pull our play side guard. All right, we're going to pull our action side guard right here, and he's going to kick the first thing that shows right off of our tackle's hip. So it's the 4 technique right there. The 4 technique is our defensive end. And now we've got to get all the way up onto the linebacker. Now you can see we're close, all right? Our tackle is going to be responsible for this backside linebacker. If we can catch this backside linebacker instead of falling down, we'll get all the way up into the secondary and split it. But that's the first, that's the start. I'll see how this kind of segments to the next play, or segues to the next play. All right, so we've got a pretty good little crease right there. We got the biggest thing that we're doing is we're getting the linebacker flow, so they don't know exactly where the ball is going. All right, now you're a little bit later in the game. Okay, so you've done a lot to set this thing up. So now here's our counter trap to it. And this is a pretty successful play for us. We're trapping this thing back to the field side. So once again, as we're trying to get the ball to the perimeter, we've got the 2 guys inside right here. These 2 guys are locked inside, which is good. So it's going to keep these guys off the perimeter for us. All right, our quarterback's going to go ahead and he's going to pitch off the pitch key, which is right here. Here's our pitch key. This is technically our read key. So if this guy was to move out, we would hand this ball off. All right, this guy squeezes right here. We're going to go ahead and run the trap to the backside. We'll read him as our number 1, which is our read key, and we'll pitch off of him as our number 2. These 2 guys on the perimeter are going to end up blocking these 2 guys. All right, watch what he does. All right, we get support out of him, so that's going to get support out of him. So this is good for us here. So we got everybody trapped to the backside. So we've split the defense, and we've pinned the linebackers inside, and then we're going to try to get the ball to the perimeter, and here we go. All right, and now we're just looking for the one-on-one block out to the perimeter. He takes himself out of the play. All right, and we're down the sideline for a pretty decent gain. All right, and this is a guy that we're going to have a hard time getting to. We're going to ask him to try to get to him, but this is the guy that we technically have to play action off of. And if anybody will remember going back to 2019, we hit Raleigh late in the day to be able to win it. It was very similar. It was maybe a little bit back here further, but we countered the motion. All right, we got support out of this guy, and then this guy ran off. It's kind of the similar action. We can get the same play action off of this guy. All right, once again, so we're trapping backside. Well, what does the trap side look like? Okay, we got this linebacker, because we've been running so much trap, he's stuck backside. So once again, the importance of the 2 linebackers sticking inside is good. There's your pitch key. Linebackers nowhere to be found, so we've got nobody scraping over the top of us. And even if we handed this ball off, we would probably be okay. We've got a body on a body. We've got Ben right here on our place on inside linebacker. We've got the kick out here. We've got the 9 technique locked outside. And now Logan would just be right through here on the ball right here. So 2 plays that go together, one early, one late, and it's kind of the setup play for one another. All right, here's our third. This is the counter trap option. Similar but a little bit different. All right, similar but a little bit different. Instead of trapping to the back side of the play, we're going to go trap back to the front side of the play. Now, these guys, they do a really good job. Watch this play side linebacker. We fool him for about a step or two. Now, one of these guys, I believe 31, was a 6th or 7th year player.
Right, yep.
8, 9. But they were really good. So these guys were pretty quick. So that, once again, is going to be our pitch key. We're going to take these two for these two out here on the perimeter, and we're going to try to pull in what we call log the 4 technique. So between the tackle and the guard right here, they're going to be responsible for these two guys, and we're going to pitch off of this guy. Raleigh does a good job of pinning it. Now we've got the ball to the perimeter. We like to have the close relationship that we do here. And now we've got a pretty good play down the sideline. The only guy that's left is a guy that gets a pretty quick read on it now. Tooley gets a good little shot on him, but still, that's a pretty athletic play for that guy right there. He recovers fairly well. And same thing here is we got the backside safety. Once again, as you get motion, this guy goes. This guy's eyes are tied back here, so up in the booth we got to say, okay, we've got all this field to work with. We need to get the play action off out of it. And so once we get the corner to support, now we've got to figure out what the play action is off of it, which is what we did in 18. I think we actually got them early on in the game, in this game, to score a touchdown. All right, we're going to flip on over to the offensive side here, to their offensive side right here. So this is kind of their, this is Marcel. Marcel plays a similar structure to us. They're a little bit different in their philosophy in it, but they play a similar structure to us. So this is what we're calling right here. Now this is what we call split flow zone, okay? Split flow zone, these guys, they like to run the football. They do a pretty good job of it. But split flow zone is a base play for them. So everybody's zoning one way, and they're going to give, they're not a whole lot different than us as they're trying to create a little bit of misdirection in the linebackers. You're trying to get the linebackers to miss a fit, and then what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your offensive line to be able to regather. There's one guy right there, regather those guys. And it's up to your running back. So your running back in these cases right here, they've got to press a certain side of the field. They're going to press a certain side of the field, and then they're going to look to hit it out the backside. All right? What they're doing is a really, really good job of it. Okay? Now, off of this play right here, they got boots. This guy will send this guy into a boot play right here. Off of this play, they'll also have an RPO. They'll send this guy. Once this safety starts to support, they'll send this guy on the slant, and that's the RPO, which I think is on here later on. So these guys do a pretty good job of it. They're pretty, not quite as experienced as they were last year up front, but they're big, and they do a pretty good job of moving it. Number one thing is the running back. The running back is a good back. We've got to contain this guy. Marcel did a good job. They let him out for 40 on one play. I think he had maybe 80, 100 yards on the day, but I thought he did a pretty good job of containing them other than those 1 or 2 plays here. So split flow zone. So here comes the tight end, or H-back. Number 40 is a very good player for him. 84 is new for him this year. Their other tight end, just 5th-year transfer to South Carolina, and plays for them now. But trying to create a new edge, set the linebackers one way, and now this ball gets all the way to the safety, and here comes the wide receiver for the safety, trying to do the same thing we're doing, just trying to take a wide receiver from a condensed alignment and pick off a safety going back to the inside. I believe this is 35 right here. 35 does a good job. The inside linebacker does a good job of really shedding the block of the center and finding his way to be able to make the play. He was a good player. He made a lot of plays all day this game. Okay, similar alignment. All right, similar alignment. The guy was up here last time, but they still got 84 back here on the backside. Okay, take a look at how this play evolves. They're doing the same thing. They're coming along, and they're giving it this split flow zone look, right? Split flow zone look, but now they release this guy, all right? So when they release this guy, it takes him out, and now they're going to open this up right here. Watch this. All right, it's just a good little RPO action kind of a play. Okay, they get you in a bad spot, and this guy's playing inside leverage. He's playing inside leverage. He knows he's got no help over the top. He's got nothing. He's got no post safety. He's got no cover 2 safety. So now he's on this guy all by himself. And if it's number 9 is one of their best players. It is number 9. All right, he catches a touchdown over here. Number 9 is one of their better players. So this right here, they did a lot of this at Furman. Some of the deeper passing game that comes from the slippery rock stuff. Quarterback's back. He does a good job with managing the offense. He can make some good throws in there. All right, and this is kind of what we're always talking about when we start complaining about the RPOs a little bit is, these guys, they're blocking down the field, and at one time it was illegal to block more than a yard down the field, but when the RPO became in fashion right here, they allow you with 3 yards now. All right, so they're giving the RPO teams a lot more leeway to be able to run this stuff. All right, including this right here. I mean, this is a wide receiver blocking downfield, which is, should be illegal. What it does is it makes it almost impossible for secondary players. I played in the secondary for many, many years, and we weren't having any RPO, so you were always reading end man, right? You read end man, you see high hat, you're back. You see low hat, you're up. Well, you see downfield lineman, you should be up. It's a little bit unfair.
And they run a lot of that stuff?
They do. They do enough of it. Their run game is good enough to where they can RPO you quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need. You need a pretty good run game, the zone stuff, the split flow zone to be able to do. And you can see it's tough to defend. Marcel's committing 9 to the box.
Yep.
And all they got to do is just go ahead and just get one guy out and put the ball right behind him. It's always, the safeties are in such a tough position right here. Once again, similar set. This is just, these plays are stacked kind of on top of each other. This is the zone portion of it, right? It's more of an outside zone play, okay? The thing about this outside zone play, so teams are starting this outside zone. So the outside zone, you'd think it's typically supposed to go heading to the outside. We're going to all kind of trap the outside or capture the outside of this. We're going to pin the safety with our wide receiver here. But what a lot of these teams are doing is they're letting everybody overrun this. And you're seeing these huge wind back lanes all the way back here. And they're just kind of shoving you out of gaps and getting to second levels. And this is what you got to be careful of. You can give up big gains in there. And all they're doing is they're just creating a seam and letting him find it. He gets 10 to 12 yards, and they're big up front. They kind of block you out a little bit. Got a holding call on this one, but it was actually a pretty good play. You can see he gets tugged a little bit. I think it was on the center here. Yeah, the center snatches him right there.
Yep.
Yeah. But, in Marcel, they got blown out. But to be honest with you, I thought they played really well on defense. They really just, offensively, I believe they gave them some short fields. Every time I turned around, they had a muffed kick, I believe, a muffed punt. They had a couple of really short fields, and the game kind of got out of control quickly. And Marcel was in the sack when we were at LR, so we have a pretty good understanding. They usually got some pretty good personnel. Coach has done a really good job there. And unfortunately, the game got out of hand pretty early for him. But you can see why. This guy's he's the offensive player of the year, right, our preseason.
Yep, the running back, Jacob Sailors.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of their offense and their defense a little bit. Cliff knows the version of that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So here we are on a Wednesday night as you get ready for that game Saturday. As the head coach, how often have you already reviewed? Like how many times have you already seen those clips this week?
Well, if you go to the offensive side, I've watched the offensive side so much over the spring. And you've watched that game probably 5 or 6 times before the season even began. Between that and the cut-ups, I've seen a whole lot of the offensive side. The defensive side, we watched more Slippery Rock, and Coach Grantham watched a lot of the Slippery Rock film, watched a lot of the Furman film. We try to plan our first 3 games in June. We try to get all of our game planning done for those, and then we just kind of plug and play what we need to in certain scenarios. The Mars Hill game, I've watched this. I've watched the defensive side about 2 to 3 times. I've watched the offensive side about 4 to 5 times, just to see what they're doing differently or what Mars Hill was up to. Not a whole lot of it is relevant to us. We've got going all the way back to when Coach Taylor, when they started the program up there, and we first played them in 2016. So we'll take our film from 16 all the way through to 21. And we'll combine all those films and put a game plan together. But he stayed pretty consistent. They're very fundamental. They're a 50 defense. They run it really, really well. They got their keys on it. It reminds me of a lot when we used to play Mike Ayers and Wofford. Mm-hmm. No matter what the coordinator was, no matter who the coordinator was, they played you one way. They played you one way very, very well.
ETSU coming up on Saturday. Incredibly insightful stuff there from Coach breaking it down. If you're listening on radio, you missed it, make sure you head over to YouTube and watch the video afterwards to hear exactly what Coach was talking about, breaking it all down, what to expect from ETSU and what worked so well for the Citadel last year. You guys ran the football really well against ETSU last year at their place. And when we come back, we'll talk about this week's matchup here at our place at Johnson Haygood Saturday against ETSU as you get ready for this year's game with the Buccaneers. We'll do that coming up next. It's the Coach's Show with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, presented by Cutwater, and we're here at the Sports Book of Charleston in North Charleston, hanging out until 8 o'clock talking Citadel football. We'll look ahead to Saturday's game when we come back here all across the Citadel Sports Network. Perfect. Sounds good. Back on the Coach's Show, the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, here presented by Cutwater, is around the Sports Book of Charleston in North Charleston, getting ready for the Citadel's home opener and conference opener this Saturday with ETSU at Johnson Haygood. Come out and hang with us this Saturday. Cheer on the Bulldogs. A good crowd will be on hand. Should be a great game, and the Bulldogs open up the home schedule and conference schedule. So, Coach, it's the only home game here, right, in the first 4 games of the season. So how important is it when you're at home like this to try to get one Saturday?
Yeah, and it's really important to get a home opener and a home win, We haven't had a home opener win in a while. It kind of would get us going in the right direction and create some momentum for us. And that's what we talked about with the guys this week, was trying to get a home opener win. We haven't had one in a few years. Create a little bit of momentum and moving in. And it's a SoCon game, so we should be up. We should be excited for it. We're anticipating a good crowd, even though I think there's going to be some rain on the way, but I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the rain. As a coach, obviously you have so much to worry about in the game itself. Do you keep an eye on the weather forecast? Does that impact, if there's going to be bad weather, how you approach a game?
Yeah, typically Wednesdays and Thursdays we will do a wet ball drill day if there's any chance of rain gonna occur on Saturday. So today we did quite a few. We did punters and snappers, place kickers and holders, quarterbacks and centers. We did it about 2 to 3 periods of the day, and then we also did it in pre-practice, centers on the line, which is just snapping the quarterback. They're just getting used to handling a wet ball, whether it's throwing it, pitching it. We do so much ball handling, we've got to make sure that we've got a good handle on it.
I don't know if you're ever outside doing rain dances, but do you, for the style of play and the team that you have, do you almost sometimes prefer some sort of weather?
I do, yeah. The rain doesn't bother us at all, as long as we're prepared for it. A little bit of confidence going in as far as, hey, we've prepared. We've had wet rain days, and we've been fine with it. It does kind of limit or change your play calling a little bit. You do a little bit less perimeter game because the loose footing and that kind of stuff is anytime that we're rounding edges and those kind of things, you cut off the wrong foot and you can go down fairly easily. Our turf can be slick at times. It can be slick when it is wet, so you've got to have a good sense or a good feel for what that is. It's all about the footing and it's all about the ball handling at that point, so you want to try to limit as much of that as possible.
You mentioned about the first conference game. I told you off air earlier, reminded you this is the first time or the earliest time in the season to have a conference opener since 2018 when your team opened the season at Wofford. Does it make a difference when you get the conference game here in week 2 as opposed to maybe a few more games under your belt before you jump into the SoCon play?
Hey, yeah, sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't. There's teams where I go down the schedule and I'm like, well, I like them early, but I like those guys late. So it really doesn't matter at this point. We got to take them as they come. They're scheduled. We got to go.
ETSU, number 8 team in the country now. During that film breakdown last segment, you were talking about the changes with the new coach coming over from Furman, offensive coordinator from Slippery Rock. So from a personnel side, from what they try to do, how different is this team from just what we saw last year?
A little bit more wide open. They take a lot more deep shots than they did when Randy was there. They don't have as many tight formations, condensed formations. They oftentimes they would run very similar formations to us. They would just do different things out of it, and they would really just try to maul you down the field. They had big offensive linemen, and then let their running backs set the linebackers like we talked about on the zone plays, get the wide receivers to cut you off right there, and then hit you with a pretty good play action that kind of sets you up. Defensively, they're very similar. They've got really good personnel. Their back end is really fast. Their front end guys, the 2 linebackers that graduated were pretty good. I thought those guys had played for a while. They understood the defense, played extremely well. But they do have some pretty good inside linebackers. The nose guard is returning. He's a good player for them. And then I believe one of the defensive ends is a returning starter for them as well.
Last year they had 2 1,000-yard rushers. First time a Southern Conference team did that since 2015, which is also ETSU. And then they bring back one of the guys, as we saw in the film breakdown last segment, but also a pretty good quarterback coming back, as we also saw in some of that footage in Tyler Rydell, and they had a lot of accolades in the preseason. So, a lot of focus on the run game, but obviously the quarterback's tough as well.
He is. He's a savvy playmaker, and he's been playing for a while. We faced him in the spring of 2020, 2021, and then 2022. He may have been, I don't remember if he was a starter in 19 or not, but I believe definitely 2020. Has done a good job, settled in there as a returning starter in the conference, gets it, understands it, manages the game extremely well.
Yeah, that's the awkward thing with COVID and everything else. He's only a sophomore, but it's his 4th year there.
Right.
As a sophomore, he could have a 6-year career. Unfortunately for the rest of the conference there at ETSU. You played on Thursday. You had a late trip home. You had a holiday weekend, if that impacts anything. But do you appreciate the extra time now to get ready for this next one with ETSU?
We certainly do. we changed our schedule up. Last year we played Coastal Carolina. We came back and we practiced on Friday. And Coastal Carolina is a lot closer. It's an hour-and-a-half trip instead of a 4-hour trip. So what I decided to do this year was I gave them the day off. So I gave them Friday off. We had to go to class on Friday. Gave them Friday off, and then I said, let's come back in on Saturday. Let's get a good solid Saturday. So Saturday was our Sunday practice. We had a helmeted practice, got a lot of special teams work, got a lot of the corrections made from the Thursday night game. And we were done by about 11:30, 12 o'clock on Saturday. A lot of those guys, we gave them all the way through until Monday. And we typically don't practice on Mondays either. But we had a good 16-period practice on Monday where we got a lot of things accomplished. We kind of started our day ahead, so to speak. So we went Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week. So we figure right now we're probably anywhere about 16 periods ahead of where we normally would be.
Coming up Saturday against ETSU, we'll get to some fan and listener submitted questions coming up next segment, but I'll ask you one more question before we do that. You referenced it earlier in terms of the new block rules in college football, blocking rules. I know ETSU referenced it in their press conferences this week as they get ready for your offense. Their coach even brought up, maybe a coincidence, but Navy only scored 7 points this past week. So we're one game into the season, but have you seen an impact in terms of what you guys have to do or do differently now because of some changes in the rules?
Yeah, we watched the Army Coastal Carolina game, and Army put up 25 points, but they did very little perimeter running, and that's where it's really hurt you is the perimeter running. They've put such tight constraints on that. It's really a 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage initial surge from the offensive line, and all these teams that are traditional offenses, very few of them have as much extensive cut blocking as we've had. So it has definitely hurt us. We had to rethink and reimagine our offense. I spent a lot of the spring and the summertime watching a lot of different teams and trying to figure out where it was going to impact us the most and where we could get away with doing some things differently. And that's where we spent a lot of our time just trying to reformulate our offense, and formationally is what we've done with it. And we've changed a lot of the formations. We've put in a couple new wrinkles, a couple new different plays to help us with the perimeter stuff. We still want to have a basis of triple options, so we still do maintain all three versions of our triple. We have a midline triple, we have an outside veer, we have an inside veer, we have a double option. We have all those things still in the option game. It's just a matter of we've got to try to do things to make sure that we take our smaller running backs and put them in the best possible shape that we can, and that's moving them around and creating a little bit of deception in the pass game. And so we've got to do a little bit more in the play-action pass game to take advantage of it, to keep the secondary off you, because that's really where it comes into play, is a little bit on the offensive line. Our offensive line is got to gain a little bit more leverage. They don't allow you to cut block too much on second level.
When we come back, we'll take our final break, come back, and get to the submitted questions for Coach Thompson here as we hang out with the Sportsbook of Charleston. Just another reason to come join us in person, not only for the breakdown of the film each and every week, but also a chance to ask a question yourself as well. We'll get to those questions when we return. It's the Coaches Show presented by Cutwater here at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. We'll get to our final segment, put a bow on things, and get ready for Saturday when we come back. You're all across the Citadel Sports Network. Sounds good. So, Trent, just play that music bed there a minute out at the end for me. Yeah, and I'll get out in time. Okay, sounds good. Okay. 15 seconds. Back on the Coaches Show for one final segment here with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, presented by Cutwater, as we're out at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. When you come out in person, not only can you hang with us, get some good food, watch all the games on the many TVs here, but you'll also get a front row seat to the film breakdown we'll be doing every week with Coach that we debuted earlier tonight, and a chance to ask a question as well. We have a bunch of questions. I wish I left more time to make sure we get all these in. But let's get through them. We put Coach on the hot seat, and we start with the toughest question of the night from Heather. What is your favorite color?
Well, Heather, just like my girls, they ask me this almost. I'm pretty good at this one. I appreciate the softball. But I do get this from my daughter, Emma, almost at least once a week. And it's blue. I'm wearing it today. I'm wearing it every day. Blue's my favorite color. It has been probably before I got to the Citadel as well.
Yeah, so it was a perfect match. A good answer. From Joe. How does the team's quarterback situation look this year?
Well, we've got two solid quarterbacks, and Ahmad gets a lot of reps. He does a lot of our tempo reps in the beginning part of the day. He gets a lot of reps with the ones, which is really good. It keeps him fresh and ready to go. He's a redshirt freshman, so he's a little bit younger, understands the offense, he's got a pretty good feel for it. And so he's a solid number 2 for us. Peyton's a fifth-year player for us, understands the league, has been a starter. Pretty smart player, understanding this offense. I think he'll get better as the year goes on. So I feel really good about both quarterbacks. Either one can play. I would like to give Ahmad a little bit more time, though.
Next question, no name. So Jane Doe asks, what game, and I know coaches are always looking week to week, but what game are you looking forward to the most this season?
It's typical to say the next one, but really, I'd be lying about it. The VMI game is one of my favorite games. It's one of the best environments. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it's the last game of the year up here, and it's a tough, dark, gloomy day up there usually. But I love playing for the Shaco. It's something to play for. It's a good rivalry game for us, and it's kind of the one that I've come to appreciate the most.
The next fan-submitted question is about Saturday's game. What's the mindset for a team as you get ready to take on the number 8 team in the country?
We don't talk about the ranking too much. What we do talk about, though, is the previous years, the previous games, how important it is to get started 1-0 in the Southern Conference, and what we think that we can do against them. So every day we talk a little bit about one portion of the game. Like today we talked about we've got to control Sailors, we've got to control number 8. Yesterday it was number 40, number 9. Offensively it was number 1 staying on sides, and number 2 we emphasized the Mike Pop that we talked about here, where the blitz comes in, and all of our run game stuff, we've got to make sure that we've got those gaps covered.
Albie asked, do you have any old school plays like end-arounds, flea flickers, etc.?
We do. We always keep an end-around with us, a reverse with us. I believe that's what it's called anymore, reverse end-around. We do. We keep it with us. We ran a reverse last week. We had it really set up really well. Our left tackle didn't pin the defensive end just far enough. He was trying to get out into the scoop and peel too quickly. But we had the whole edge set. I thought we were going to get a pretty good gain on that. Raleigh was a classic end-around guy. When we lost him, we didn't really have a guy to flip it to, so we started flipping it to the A-backs this year. So we ran a flea flicker last year against Wofford. It's in our bag of tricks. It's just kind of set up off a certain play that when we put it in, we always put the flea flicker with it.
Lastly, we saw this with Vanderbilt. Brad asked, would you consider allowing women on the team?
I would definitely consider allowing women, of course, if they were good enough. If I had a nose guard or something that was just a fierce nose guard in there, I definitely would do it. If they're capable of playing for me, I'll take all comers at this point.
And then my question for you, because it's been well documented that you lost a lot of weight here this offseason. I had to lose some pounds after the pandemic, but I know it's so tough. For me, my kryptonite is French fries. I can't stay away from French fries. So for you, you've gotten into great shape. You lost a lot of weight. What's your kryptonite? What's the one thing you still can't stay away from?
Well, I've stayed away from it, and I've been really, really good about it. oatmeal cookies, that would absolutely crush me. But I haven't had an oatmeal cookie in over 2 months now. It's been about 3 months now. I haven't had anything to drink in a long time either. I've actually cleaned myself up pretty good. I figured that from a lot of different things. Is number one, like you said, the pandemic kind of put a lot of weight on us. Number two is just from a mental and just looked at myself. I was like, you know what, I could be a lot better than this, So I wanted to change my life around a little bit, and mentally and physically.
That next time you have an oatmeal cookie, though.
Oh,
my goodness.
I know it.
That'll be something special. Before we let you go, Coach, as we get ready for Saturday against ETSU, we've been breaking it down throughout the night, but I always, as we get towards the end, one of the last questions is just the keys. So as you get ready for Saturday's game, and still prep to be done, but, when you preach to your team, and I think you've already referenced some of these things earlier, but what are those most important things for Saturday?
Yeah, I mentioned it before. Sailors, we've got to contain him, number one. We've got to put pressure on the quarterback. Number 9 is a good player. He's a good receiver. We've got to make sure that we've got our best guy matched up on him as best we possibly can. Sometimes we're going to move him around where it's going to be hard to do that. But I do feel comfortable with my 2 corners out there. Destin's done a good job out there. Poole, he really had a good day. He just got, he got a little bit out of his head a little bit on Saturday. He's going to calm down. He's going to do a lot better this Saturday. And so I think on the secondary end, we're going to be okay. We've just got to really contain Sailors on the defensive side. Offensively, we've got to be able to finish that drive. No matter what, whether it's today, whether it's Saturday or next Saturday, we've got to be able to finish those drives. For us, though, we've got to watch the blitzes. We've got to watch the 50 defense. We've got to find a way to move the ball to the perimeter and take care of the football. We didn't do that last week, and it hurt us. Now the fullback's got to be a little bit more present in the second half, I believe.
Well, Saturday, ETSU's in town at Johnson Haygood with kickoff scheduled for 4 p.m. Come out and join us. If you can't make it, coverage begins an hour in advance on the radio network all across the country. You can stream it online or here locally, listen to it locally as well on the radio network and all across the country. We'll be back here next Wednesday for the Coaches Show with Coach Thompson once again, breaking down film, answering your questions, talking Citadel football, having some good food as well. Come out and join us, get a drink or two, and talk Citadel football with us next Wednesday here from the Sportsbook of Charleston. Coach, as always, appreciate all the time, the insight, and wish you the best of luck Saturday.
Thanks, Luke.
That's Coach Brent Thompson. We'll see you Saturday at Johnson Haygood. From the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston, I'm Luke Morrow, wishing you a happy rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you this weekend for the Citadel and ETSU right here all across the Citadel Sports Network.